It is generally believed that the temples that have survived are dating from the Gupta period. And the most important temple is the temple, Dashavatar temple at Deogarh in UP. Now, it is very interesting that you should ask this question because, in my recent book, again, I don't want to seem as if I'm plugging my book, but there are two seals that I have published in that book. Those seals belong to the Indus period. And they both the seals show what we can call proto Shiva. In one seal, proto Shiva is seen seated next to what seems like a structure made of reed, and that could be a temple. And in the second seal, Shiva, or what we can call proto Shiva, is actually shown inside that reed structure. So this is conjecture. It's very difficult to actually say whether it is an early temple or not. But there are evidences, and in fact, there are structures of a sacred site or a sacred image, like a people tree is very sacred in India. So we have on the walls around sacred structures, we have people tree shown as depicted in an enclosure. So that is not a proper temple, but it shows a people tree surrounded by a structure which is intended to coordinate off from the surrounding areas. So I can say that the concept of sacred space, temple means sacred space, but I'm saying the concept of sacred space definitely existed before the Gupta period. But the Gupta period temple at Deogarh in Uttar Pradesh is among the early surviving temples. But as I said, on seals, you can see sacred space. And in fact, I want to tell you from Mathura. Mathura was an important center of Buddhism, Jainism, and what we now call Hinduism. And image making began of all these three sampradayas in Mathura around the same time. And the images were made by the same craftsmen. Now in Mathura, before temples were made, there was what is called ayag pattas. Ayag patta was a slab, a stone slab or a terracotta slab about the size of a mobile phone or even smaller. So those ayag pattas were certainly meant for worshipping, and they were before common era, and they were placed somewhere. Obviously, when you're making ayag patta, when you're making these slabs, where are you going to put them? You're going to put them somewhere. We don't know where they were put, but that so many of them have survived. And it is surprising that 95% of the ayag pattas were donated by women whose names are given, whose family profession is given. So these I'm not saying that the ayag pattas were temples, but I'm saying they were meant for worship. They were tablets of worship. So where were they placed? And just to take back the argument even further, from Mathura, we have an inscription that is dated before Common Era, before 15 Common Era. Why do I say before 15 Common Era? Because that inscription mentions a ruler whose reign was over in 15 Common Era. So that means that inscription is more than 2300 years old. That inscription is only partial, but that inscription says, I'm making a structure. I am making a structure and it mentions that that structure has a toran. Toran means arch. The structure that I'm making, the person's name is given there. I'm making a structure around a rectangle. That structure, the toran is mentioned because the rest of the inscription is not there. And it says, I'm making this in honor of Vasudev, Dev of Devs. I'm making this structure in honor of Vasudev. Who's Vasudev? God of gods. So it's talking about a structure. It is before 15 Common Era. So we have, but structure hasn't survived, obviously, but that inscription, partly damaged, has survived, and it mentions parts of the structure, including the toran, that is the arch. So obviously, there was some structure that was being made. And where is, then apart from that, of that period, we have found a Vasu door jam. Door jam means part of a door. Vasu is Vasu, it can be for Vasudev. And that thing that we have found is 8.5 feet tall. So that structure of which it is a part was at least 8.5 feet tall because it is broken. So the portion that has survived is 8.5 feet tall. So what I'm saying is that the surviving full temple is of the Gupta period at Deoghar, but we have this reference of a stone structure from Mathura before 15 Common Era. We have so many ayag pattas. Where were they placed? It is a question that is an open question.